It's that time again. We're gonna bake Christmas cake. So I have everything here ready. I've already measured out my ingredients, and those are some of them there. Can't do without the rum and the wine and the spices, and we have our eggs and our lime, and we can't do without our browning, and we're all set to go. So you want it to be zero like that when the container is on there, and then you weigh. I'll do the same thing for the sugar, 8 ounces of sugar, equal amounts of flour and sugar. I'm using brown sugar. So remember, if you're using 1 pound of flour, it's 1 pound of sugar, 1 pound of butter. Some people use a dozen eggs, or you can use 8 eggs if you want it really extra light, and you can use a dozen eggs for a pound. So if you're going to use a dozen eggs for a pound, you're going to use 6 eggs for half a pound, which is the same as 8 ounces. If you like using the nutmeg in the bottle, the pre-grated nutmeg, you can use it. The nutmeg, I'm using fresh nutmeg. It comes in a shell like this. I brought the shell, and this is the nutmeg. And I'm using a 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon. This is a 1/2 teaspoon, so half of this would be a 1/4. And I'm going to be using 1 teaspoon of the allspice. Allspice actually has in nutmeg and cinnamon, but it also has in pimento seeds and some other spices. If it goes over, it doesn't matter. I'm using 1 teaspoon. It's a little over, but that's fine. So it all depends how much you like, but we're expecting to have a lot of spices in the fruit cake. So we're adding 2 teaspoons baking powder, because for every cup of flour, you add 1 teaspoon of baking powder. Sifting incorporates air into the mixture, into the flour, which makes for a lighter cake. Plus it also mixes everything more evenly together, all the dry ingredients. And if there are any lumps or any strange objects in the flour, you will get them out. So I'll just finish sifting this, and then we'll move on to the wet ingredients. So this is my fruits, which I have been soaking for over the past year. Each year I still buy it at the supermarket, so as I use this, I just prepare some more. How I prepare my fruits is I use equal amounts of prunes and raisins. The fruits from that has been soaking. This is how it looks. So this is how it looks, nice and rich. So what I do when I'm blending it, I don't blend it until it's totally pureed out. I give it like a half blend, so I still have a little texture, but it is still very soft, and it will even be softer once it's baked. So I'm going to use 2 cups of these fruits in the cake. So let me weigh that out. So I'm using 1 tablespoon of vanilla. If you do a little extra, it doesn't matter. I always let it overflow a little. So I usually make a bigger batch, but because I want to make it easier for you with the video, because not everyone will be baking a big batch of cake. And I use 1 tablespoon of white rum. Enovi white rum. So what I did was I've been saving my lemon zest because sometimes near to December you can't get any limes in the supermarket, and I know I won't be going to the market, so I've been saving some. But if you don't, this is a zester. If you don't have one of these, you can use a regular grater, but you grate very lightly because you don't want the white part in it, too much of that. So I'm just going to show you what I do. I'm going to use this lime to put some lime juice also into the... This is not a perfect lime because I'm running out of limes now, but it's fine. So you see it's coming off on the back. I love the smell of lime when I'm zesting it. So I want a quarter of this, not too much, the lime rind, because it's very strong. See a little top of the lime. Just want to use about that in it. Some people put it directly on the eggs. For me, everything is going into the same mixture, so it doesn't really matter to me. So I just I like to mix everything, put all the wet ingredients together first, because when I start to mix, I don't want to have to stop again. So I'm going to use 1 teaspoon of the lime juice. I'm going to use 1 teaspoon of the lime juice. I'm not wasting my lime. Limes are very expensive in Jamaica. So I'm getting everything out. It's a little bit less, but that's fine because, as I said before, the wine is very tart. So I don't need any extra lime juice. These are my foil containers. These are 2 pound and 1 pound containers. I have more, but these are washed. I always wash them before, because unless you're buying a sealed pack, when you have them in the supermarket, the people that pack them on the shelves, the customers that come and handle them, the cashiers handle them, the packers handle them. So please to wash your containers and dry them properly. Don't let them just air dry, because it will leave watermarks on them. So use a dish towel or some napkins and dry them properly. And the good thing about these containers, you don't even have to flour them, once you butter them properly, the cake doesn't stick to them, and you don't have to line them either. So here I have my 8 ounces of butter. You can use half butter, half margarine. I usually use half butter, half margarine, because butter is really very expensive here in Jamaica. So I just find that good quality margarine, or if you want to go straight healthy, because butter is more healthy than margarine, you can go straight butter. So, and then I'm adding the sugar, and I'm gonna cream those together. Now we're at the egg stage, so you can see that little white thing on the egg there. It's the little membrane that suspends the yolk in the egg. So what we usually do is take it out. They say it makes the egg raw, the cake raw, but I'm not sure. But our parents did it, my mommy did it, and so we just do it. I'm not sure what it is like either, if it when it, in terms of the baking, if it would get maybe hard and you taste it separately in the cake itself. I'm not sure about that, but we take that out. So what I like to do, I break each egg separately, because if you have a bad egg in the bunch, it will spoil everything. So I break each egg separately and then pour it in the container. So, and I use 2 teeth. Everybody has their own method of taking off that little thing off the egg, but I just I like to use these 2 teaspoons. I find it quite easy. So I'm gonna break another one. So you can use 4 to 6 eggs. It all depends on the size of the eggs, and I think the temperature too, and then how much you're gonna mix the cake. So because I'm using a cake mixer, a hand mixer, I don't really need to use as many eggs. But if you're just doing it by hand, then you might have to use the 6 eggs, because the eggs determine how light you want the cake. So if you like the heavier cake too, you can use less eggs. If you want the cake to be very light, then you use the 6. So I'm gonna start with 4, and then I see how that looks, and if I'm satisfied, then I won't use the additional anymore. And these eggs are fairly large, so one side usually has a bigger one, so it's a little tricky sometimes. So if you're doing a lot of cake, you might not have the time to do all of this, but since we're just doing our thing for Christmas and at home, we take the time to do it perfect. So I'm gonna finish up this with the rest of the eggs, and then we get back to the video. So let me do one more. So I like to use, this is a palette knife. I like to use this to break my eggs because it gives it a nice clean break. This is what I normally use to frost my cakes and so. So I go around to that side, try to stabilize the yolk, and when I catch that, I break it off, and then I just scoop it up. And that's it. There's another tiny one on this side. Scoop it off. And I find using the spoons like this, it makes it a cleaner process and you don't get your hands messy. Okay, so I'm gonna be using mainly the mixer. I'm using a hand mixer, but I think it, you know, it allows me more freedom, and I don't like when you have the standing mixer and you can't clean up as you go along. You have to be, you know, you don't have enough space to move. I like to use like this nice stainless steel mixing container, and I'm mixing it. And so if I'm not gonna do it with the mixer, I'll use a wooden spoon for this part, and when I'm adding the eggs, I use this. I use a it has to be a very sturdy whisk, because some of them are very flimsy, and as I would say in Jamaica, them not have no use. But this, it has to be a very sturdy whisk if you're going to use the whisk to mixing the eggs into the batter. So I'm just going to demonstrate to you a little bit to show you how I would use it's just to incorporate, because you can leave out the butter a couple of hours before, and you just mix like that. And also you put it on the surface. If it's a very slippery surface, you put a dish towel underneath the bottom to sort of stabilize the surface. So you mix the butter and the sugar together until the sugar is fully and evenly incorporated into the butter, until it's all one, what you call a homogeneous mixture, where everything is even throughout. So all you have to do is just keep mixing. We call it elbow grease. We call it elbow grease. So you have to use your hand to mix. So this is how we used to do it growing up. We didn't have an electric mixer, and we would take turns to help my mommy mix it. Sometimes we kids would try to bake our own cakes too. So we took turns. Alright, so I'm going to move on to the hand mixer, but in the interest of time, I'm going to move on to the hand mixer. So I'm going to start on low, and then I turn up the speed. So this is how we used to do it growing up. We didn't have an electric mixer, and we would take turns to help my mommy mix it. So I'm going to move on to the hand mixer, but in the interest of time, I'm going to move on to the hand mixer. continue like this until I get the texture I want. So when I reach that texture, I will get back to the video. If you're gonna be mixing by hand, I would suggest you use granulated sugar because it has a finer texture and it's easier to mix. But since I'm using the mixer, so you're not gonna get the granules of the sugar fully melted out or so. You have to start adding the eggs. So this is fine for me because everything now has its even throat. So I'm gonna add eggs one by one. So between each egg, you can wipe down the sides using a spatula. If you don't have a spatula, just use a spoon. And it doesn't matter if it looks a little if it curdles, it doesn't matter. Okay, so I've mixed in my 4 eggs. I'm not gonna add any more eggs because I'm satisfied with how this looks. If I add another egg, it might get a little too watery. So what I do, I don't add the fruits first. I always add a little flour, then fruits, and alternate. Start with flour, finish with flour. So if I'm gonna add 4 amounts of flour, I'm gonna add 3 amounts of fruit. Another thing, I don't like when it gets too watery, and that will happen if you add the fruits directly to this mixture and add all the fruits one time, and that will affect the texture of the cake. It will let the cake be hot. So I'm gonna add about a 1/5 of the amount of flour I'm using. Or you can add a quarter, it's up to you. You can also fold in the flour if you want. You can use a spoon or a large spatula. I don't mind using the mixer because I can adjust the speed. So when you're folding in the flour, you go around and you cut down the middle. Go around, you cut down the middle. Go around, you cut down the middle. So that's how you fold in your flour. Okay, I'm gonna add about a third of the fruits. And along with that, I'm gonna add some of the browning. So the amount of browning you add depends on how you want your cake to look. If you want it very dark, you add more browning. And the different brownings have different intensities. So I would say maybe about 3 tablespoons, but it still is you have to just add browning until you're fully satisfied with the color. So I'm adding about a tablespoon of browning first. A tablespoon and a half of browning first I'm adding right now. Let's mix and see what happens. I'm just demonstrating to you more the folding in method, so I'm not going to use a mixer on this step, just so you can see how it goes. But it's much easier when you use a mixer. So always remember to clean up the sides, keep the sides clean. Okay, you don't want, when you finish mixing your cake, you have little pockets of flour that came off the sides into your cake. So you see how it takes longer when you use the thing to fold in. It smells so good. So I'm gonna add another set of fruits and alternate it with the flour, and on the last addition of the flour I will look at the texture and we'll look at it and see if we want any more flour. If you don't want your cake to be too heavy, try to keep it the texture with these little peaks throughout. You see it forms peaks. Try to keep it at that texture throughout. So if you see it's too watery, you add some more flour before you add the fruits. If you want a nice, you know, light texture, not too light because it's a fruit cake. It's not going to be too light, but it will be a really delicious cake and not taste like a pudding. Okay, so I'm going to add some more fruits and another tablespoon and a half of the browning. I just hardly have any fruits left back, but I don't want to add it all. I want to see what's happening, and I'll add another tablespoon and a half of the browning, and then we mix again. Okay, after you've added your browning, before you decide if you're going to add any more browning, check the sides of the container and ensure there's no browning at the sides, on the edges, because sometimes it might be hiding there. And then and use the spatula. This is a good time to get the spatula in and scrape up the bottom of the cake mixture. See, the lighter parts are at the bottom. So we're trying to get our color now, so to make sure everything is fully mixed in. Sometimes some of the stuff is on the bottom that the mixer never got. So this is the test. If you want to know if your batter is going to give you a nice cake, you put a spoon in there, and if it stands up, then that means your cake is going to be perfect. If it falls down, then it's too soft. Or if you want a more dense pudding-like cake. But I don't want a pudding, I want a cake. Plug out the mixer first, then you release it and scrape down all this good stuff into the mixer. Or if you have kiddies in the house, you just give them, let them lick. We used to get it and lick it when we lick a bit, so, and give somebody the bowl to lick too. Alright, it's Christmas, why not? Okay, I decided I'm gonna use a baking tin because I'm not the aluminum tins, the little disposable ones, because I'm gonna let this cake be the cake for the house. Plus, I want to show you guys how to go about lining the tin. So you get some parchment paper or greaseproof paper. This one is called cooking and baking paper. It's all the same thing. I'm going to put it right to the edge on both sides. And I'm going to mark out with a pen. You can use a pen or pencil, because then you're going to cut within the line. Okay, so I'll just finish it up now. And I'm going to do a little test to see how it fits into the bottom of the cake pan. So before I add any butter, it's fine. There's a little bit up on the edges, but that's good, not a problem. So that's perfect. Just line it up with the tin onto the height and mark it. And then I'll just fold the paper, straighten up the edge. You don't have to put the two exactly straight. As long as you have one good straight edge. Line up the mark. Make sure the sides are in line with each other. That way you ensure you have a straight line. And I'm gonna cut, and I'll do that and then come back. Put some water in a Pyrex dish. You can use a small tin if you want. This, I didn't put too much water because I don't want the cake to steam. I just want the cake to be moist. So this is a good way to keep your cake moist. So I'm gonna bake, I'm gonna set the timer for an hour, but at 325 degrees, and then I'll check it at about half an hour, and then every 15 minutes after that. I'm gonna use a little metal skewer to test the cake. It comes out clean. I'm gonna take the cake out of the pan now. I'm gonna turn it upside down first, so I want to ensure the top doesn't stick to the surface of the container or the surface I'm putting it on. So I'm putting some plastic wrap on it. Here we go. So I'm gonna put this cutting board on it. You can use a flat plate, but I'm gonna use this cutting board. And turn it over like that. And you just lift it off. Ensure the cake is. That's it. And luckily, normally we have to peel off the back paper from the cake, but it didn't stick to the cake, so that's a good baking paper I got. So now I want to put it on my cake stand, so I'm gonna turn the cake stand upside down, ensure the cake is in the center of it, put my hand underneath the cutting board or the plate or whatever you decide to use, and turn it over. And voila, here's our cake. So that's it. And here's our cake now. I've decorated it with some cherries. You can also put some wine on it to preserve it, but this cake will not last very long, so I'm not going to put any wine on it. The wine prevents it from being dried out, and it preserves it too, but it also gives it a stronger taste. But for now, this cake, because I want everyone to be able to partake of this cake, so I'm not gonna put anything on it to make it stronger, so that the children and the older people will not be able to have it. So I'm just gonna have this cake just as is, but I'm gonna cut it and we're gonna see how inside looks, okay? Because I have other cakes I'm gonna make too. Okay, so let's see what it looks like on the inside. It's still a little bit warm. So it won't cut as clean as it when it's fully cool. Nice and yummy. Nice texture, lots of fruits. Not too light, not too heavy. And this is our Jamaican Rum Fruitcake, also called the Jamaican Black Fruitcake, also called the Jamaican Wedding Cake.